Welcome back to the Behind the Well show. Roger Abel with Elias Randall. Elias, fourth quarter coming soon. Fall just happened here a week or two ago. Weather's changing. What's changing in your world?
That's a good question. I think the things that are on my mind moving forward are the election. We have an election coming up. We just had some rate cuts from the Federal Reserve, so it's always kind of interesting to think about what does all this mean for investors and what are we going to do? What are we going to be talking about with people? But as far as moving into fall, I love the fall. Best time of year, my favorite season.
It's my favorite season, although the one after this is not my favorite season. So it's like this level of excitement about nights getting cool, but also the dreaded winter that will arrive eventually.
You'll be okay.
Although
you've done it like 45 times now, so you should be all right.
Ironically, I feel like winter comes a month later now. Like I really feel like winter doesn't really start until like mid-January, where before it used to start in December. And you'll watch this year, I'll be like super cold in November. But you mentioned elections, and honestly, it's probably the most popular question that people are asking right now. One, what happens during an election? Two, at the end of the day, how should I invest during an election? And of all the elections I remember, this is probably one of the most politicized ones that are out there. We've got just a lot of different things have happened in this election cycle. There's been a couple of assassination attempts. We had a Democratic nominee who was pulled off the ticket, someone else added. I mean, it's a little bit of chaos, so I understand why people are a little apprehensive and want some guidance.
Absolutely. Yeah, when people ask about this, I usually share with them, I agree with you. There's a lot of crazy things going on. It's just some of the stuff, assassination attempts, and then how one candidate became a candidate. It's odd, right? Especially if and I'm not making a political statement, but just knowing the history of our country and how things work, it's a little hectic.
So I did our other radio show the other night, and Nationwide released a white paper, and it's titled "Investing in a Highly Politicized Climate." And I thought it was a really good paper because it talks about a lot of things that are actually happening in America based upon what political party you follow and how you start to skew what you believe you should do in the market. And they actually call it tribalism, where it's like you join this tribe and then you start to follow a certain news media, or you're consuming information from certain outlets on social media platforms. And it got me thinking, we've talked before about how I can tell what somebody is watching on YouTube when I talk to them based upon how
the group
the conversation goes.
Tribalism, group think, however you want to say it. You can, and the algorithms, it's easier to tell now with people because we all know the algorithm's going to show you exactly what's going to keep you watching.
Good example. I had no fantasy football content in my YouTube feed until middle of August when I started searching for fantasy football. And the last 2 weeks, it's all about the best wide receivers because my wide receivers are injured. So I've searched more, kicks me more content. So it starts to skew how I view things. And I think if you think about the ways to be successful during an election, this highly politicized time, the number one thing people can do is try to figure out how to tune out the noise. And it's really hard. It's really hard if you're watching the news every night and you're researching what's going on because right now, they're dumping the news on you right now. They're dumping all the bad news on you. This is what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, the real driver of investment returns doesn't have a whole lot to do with who the president is. And that's not me saying it. It's me looking at actual data. So since the inception of the S&P 500, there's been 24 election cycles. The S&P 500, or 24 election years, 20 out of 24 times, it's ended positive. the S&P 500. It's right in line with the historical averages of how often the S&P 500 is positive. And it just goes to show that most of what's out there and is scaring people, it's really not that important. You know, I watched Dave Ramsey had a clip talking about how who the president is, good or bad, has affected him over the last 15 years.
I'm going to guess Dave said, this is Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey.
And he's talking, his life over 15 years,
last 15
I would
years.
guess has not gotten worse.
No, that's what he
Dave
said.
Ramsey.
He said, my life has gotten better because I'm in control of my life. You're in control of yours. Just like you're in control of your investing future.
Yeah. Well, and that's to me, that's a basic, and I'm fairly patriotic, but that's like a basic American value that I'm going to be in control of my own life.
But think about this. The media wants to make you believe that this person who we elect to be in charge for 4 years is going to determine how your life turns out or determine how your investments work out. And truth be told, that has such a little bearing, it's really irrelevant. We subscribe to this idea at Premier Investments about having a media filter. How do we disseminate information and how do we make sure we're consuming accurate information that's beneficial to our long-term financial health? Franklin Templeton, I believe, is who put it out. They put out the Apocalypse du jour, the 30 reasons to not invest over the last 30 years. Every single year, there's been a reason that you should invest.
And there'll be more in the future.
There's always going to be. But what has the market continually done? It just grinds higher. There's blips along the way. I don't know if Molly can put the graphic in here, but I had a chart that shows over the last, I think it was from 1984 to current, if you look at quarterly returns of the stock market, it's up and down. Like it's pretty volatile, right? If you're just looking on a quarterly basis. But if you then take that chart and move it into annual returns, it's just a straight line going up.
Well, right. And that's one thing we always talk about. Time is the solution to volatility. And it's a hard solution because in the short term, it requires you to make good decisions when other people are making bad decisions. It's hard to do.
Also think about what we've done just as a society. We believe more information is better. You know, I jokingly, where was I the other day? I was teaching a class. I'm like, well, you guys wake up every single morning. You log into your Fidelity account. You check your balance every day. You know, people can tell me they don't check their balance every day. I know 27% of the customers here check their balance every day because I can see how often they log in.
So I'm sure that's probably a reflection of society too. It's probably 20.
Well, there's a certain amount that haven't even adopted the technology, like they're only getting their statements, right? But they're monthly or quarterly statements. But most people are logging in to look at this every day, and it's actually not healthy. If you think about some of our best customers, Elias, during 2022, some of the common things that they mentioned to us is, I'm not even opening my statements right now. We know the market's not good, so I don't want to be a poor investor and make a bad decision, so we're just not going to open them. And the clients I'm talking about, they'd come in here and their statements are literally unopened.
Oh, there's plenty. There's plenty. So I want to point out another chart we can share too I pulled this one from Hartford Funds. So it has every president since 1961, and it's a hypothetical of growth of $10,000 starting in 1961. So it would have been over $5 million in 2023. That's buying the S&P 500 and then no more trading.
You just want a $10,000 one-time deposit over 50 years?
Yep.
Man, wish my parents would have given me 10
Started
grand.
in 1961. And then the other thing that really caught my eye, for as much as people say when this party's in charge, the market does better. When that party's in charge, the market does better. And the president matters. Here's the reality. There's only been two presidents since 1961 that had less than double-digit annual stock market returns. there's only two. So starting with John Kennedy, he was over 12. Lyndon Johnson was 10. Richard Nixon, negative 1.6. So his president
Nixon was, what were his dates? Because he was just clobbered with inflation.
Inflation in the 70s.
Yeah.
So regardless of who was the president coming into that inflationary period, your odds of having good returns were super low.
And what was his return over his period?
It says negative 1.6.
Okay.
And that's from 69 to 74.
69, so that 69 to 74. But so let's actually think about that. Obviously, minus 1% is not great. But it's also not the end of the world.
Correct.
And people look at their portfolio, and when they see it go down 20%, I'm so confused as to why they just believe 20%, it's never coming back. It's always come back. And people are so scared of the market. Okay, well, that's the worst period. It's minus 1%.
So, right. So if Richard Nixon was negative 1.6, then Gerald Ford was the next president. How do you think just guess, Gerald Ford, like how do you think his market returns were?
I bet he averaged 16%.
18.1.
Yeah, so
he just came off of 5 years of terrible market.
Well,
and then the next, or 4 years, I suppose, and then the next 4-year period was great.
Well, if you just think about it, like typically some of the best years are after the worst. It's just the dynamic of the market. I mean, markets tend to overreact, right? They do. They
in the short term, yes.
In the short term, they overreact. Over time, they level out. And that's the opportunity for people. You know, if the market, goes down dramatically, well, that's your opportunity to buy more. And, if you're taking distributions, the reason you should have a bucket strategy and you don't have to really worry about it. I think a lot of people are nervous, especially going into this election, as to what's really going to happen. And we've said this really since the last election, because we go through this every 4 years, ironically. Monetary policy has more to do with it, likely, than who the president is, meaning what we're doing from an interest rate environment. And, we just saw a 0.5 point rate cut by the Federal Reserve. Is that good or bad? I think everybody sees that as good. I think for some people it's a positive thing. For some people it's a not so positive thing. And it goes a little deeper. I know we did some research on what's happened the last 3 times, or the last 3 periods in time that the Federal Reserve started off a rate cutting cycle with 50 basis points. Like the first cut was 50. That was 2001, 2007, 2020. 2 out of 3 years, markets were negative. Okay. That doesn't mean it's going to happen this time. But people that are in distribution mode, if I were them, I'd be planning on, all right, what's my plan if the market goes down 15% over the next 12 months? And I know we just went through the exercise of our individuals who are taking distributions, making sure we had 1 to 3 years of cash lined up for them so that we don't have to sell investments when they're down. And those are the things that people should be speaking with their advisors about, not, hey, the market's going to go down, what should we do? It's, okay, if the market goes down, what's the plan? Like, if you have a plan to deal with it before it happens, it's way easier to take care of the problem than trying to be reactive to this market that goes backwards.
Well, and here's what this is what caught my attention from the last meeting, the last Fed meeting, when Jerome Powell said the economy is basically fine. So I kind of thought about that for a couple of days, and then
Let me stop you real quick though.
Yeah.
Did you watch the whole meeting?
Not the whole meeting.
So he started it out saying the economy's in great shape. And as it progressed,
I probably saw that. I watched for like the first 10
as
to
it
15
progressed,
minutes.
it became the economy's basically fine.
Yeah. So here I asked this, and I'll ask you the same question. So let's say you and I were out for a bicycle ride, right? We're riding bikes together, and I crash my bike, and you go, "Hey, Eli, are you okay?" And I say, "I'm great." That means something, right? Or I say, "I'm basically fine." If I say I'm basically fine, what are you going to think?
I'm going to think that something hurts, but you can get up and ride your bike again.
Right. So
Right?
that's how I kind of took I
Like,
guess I take that comment, and
I
then
would
when
look
you
at
look,
it this way. You got a skinned up knee. Like, oh yeah, I skinned my knee. How bad? I don't know. I didn't break a bone, right? Because you broke your bone, you're like, dude, I'm not good. But if you're great, you're like, yeah, nothing happened. Let's roll. Basically, fine is there's a bruise or a bump somewhere.
and I think that was an accurate reflection, at least of, I think, the people I know and the experiences I'm seeing around us, and then listening to other people talk, listening to economists. I think basically fine is kind of where we're at. Like, it's a little, things are slowing down, and it feels like, I think most people, it feels like a recession. Certainly with how expensive things have become, and everyone seems to know people that have been laid off recently. And then when we were diving into those, to get back to the investing, when we started looking at when it's a 50 basis point cut the first time, and then you look out 12 months, I think that's also kind of an indicator of economies that are basically fine. Right now, that doesn't mean you abandon. I'm not trying to scare investors or anything like that, because we just talked about if you're taking money out, well, you're going to make different decisions than if you're accumulating money as well too, right? So it's investing. It's always the most basic question is, what's your time horizon? What do you want this money to do for you? But I think if anyone feels cautious about the economy right now, you can make that argument. It's probably justified.
So I had a talk with one of our friends the other day, and he was talking about, how inflation is just, I just said, you think you're better off today than you were 10 years ago? And he's, well, I don't know, not really. I go, why? He goes, well, the cost of gas is X, and eggs are X, and food is X. I'm like, yeah, but you own assets. So like, maybe your daily budget isn't as good as it was a few years ago, but your overall net worth has exploded. And it's funny how people, it's kind of that tribalism idea, like view how they're doing only based upon their daily budget and don't look at the big picture. And what got me thinking about it is there was an article, it was on CNBC, and it's like this couple who's 42 and 43 years old, and they're like, we're basically broke. And they had like a financial coach helping them. And they got a net worth of $1 million. Well, guess where most of their net worth is at?
Probably in their home.
Their home. And this is where people have to understand what different assets mean for them. Like your home, it's not really an investment asset. It's a place to live. It's an investment in your lifestyle and how you want to, come home every day and live. But it's never really going to generate you any money. And in this article, I think it shows the effects of a couple things. One, there are families struggling. This family makes $140,000 a year, and they're basically broke. And they're not broke because they don't make enough money, and they're not broke because of inflation. Obviously, inflation has started to eat into their budget. They're broke because of the ease and ability to buy things. So one of the things that stood out is they spend $2,000 a month at Amazon.
What are they buying from Amazon?
Well, it's quoted, it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's not big items. Most people don't go broke because they're buying big things. They're really conscious and aware of big purchases. They're buying $15 to $30 items that slowly bleed their account every month.
And it's probably like knick-knack stuff for kids and
Bike
gadgets.
Yeah, dude, it was like bike tires. Let me pull it up. I have it. It was literally like stuff that you get advertised and marketed to on Facebook or wherever you're consuming your information. You're like, oh yeah, man, I need to have that. And next thing you know, you just bought it. But I've done it, right? I'm sure you've done it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone does. Okay, I'll give you a good example. This is probably 2 years ago. We do something called Fancy Christmas, where we get together with a group of our friends. We all dress up. Everybody brings wine, just kind of like a fun night where friends get together. And I was on a social media platform, and Snoop Dogg had out like this wine. I'm like, oh, it would be so cool for this party. Like, because, we all grew up in the 90s. So we grew up in that, like, 90s rap era, like Snoop Dogg was who we listened to, Dr. Dre. So next thing I know, I got a whole case of this thing in my cart. Like online, I'm like, I just took like 5 seconds thinking about it. I'm like, why am I buying a case?
What's in is a case of wine 12
It's like 12 bottles. It was like,
wow.
But I'm like, I just started thinking like, why am I buying this? And why do I think I need to buy this?
It's for fancy
right
Christmas
now.
for the next 6 years.
Right. And I've never tried it. But why would I get one bottle? So I think a lot of times people, okay, here's the beyond necessities they were buying: kids' sunglasses, soccer equipment, bike tires. You know, I look at my house. Do you know how many basketballs I have in my house?
Don't get me started on toys.
How many drinking mugs do you have?
Oh, cups for the
Cups.
kids? It's unreal.
Elias.
We have 3 kids and probably 15 cups for kids. Like, why do 3 kids need 5? Each kid needs 5 cups, or just have one that they teach them how to clean it themselves.
My oldest daughter has 4 Stanleys, so she can rotate the colors and different color straws. I'm not making this stuff up. You know. And I think back to, you know how many drinking cups I had when I was a kid? Exactly 0.
You just use
I drank out
glass
of a
that was
water
up,
fountain or hose.
or
No one
you
gave me a
use
cup.
the glass that's in the cupboard.
No one gave me a cup. When you went to basketball practice, I didn't have my own like water bottle. I went to the drinking
They got
fountain.
a water fountain at the school.
Or they had the big jugs with the cups, you know, the Gatorade you put in there. But now
Coach will give you a water break.
we got like a whole store. I mean, these Yeti cups, how many of these do I have? Now, truth be told, they get given to me. But you just look at the reason people are broke. Most of it isn't because of inflation. It's because they're being marketed to, and we see everything in society as a necessity. I need to have it now. A friend of mine brought this up. He goes, man, I just don't know how my kid's ever going to get ahead, how they're going to ever afford a house. I go, well, let me ask you a question. When you got married, how many times a week did you eat out? He goes, never. I go, how many times a week does your kid eat out? He said, every day. There you go. We've seen convenience and all this stuff that we can buy right now as a necessity, and most of it's not a necessity.
And with young people, especially in this situation, because there's almost 2 paths where you have young folks that have not made saving a priority. And so then these little purchases, that's what hurts you. But if saving and investing is a priority, meaning you're doing it, you can find a way to still do these little purchases, probably not as frequently, right? Like people who are good savers and investors tend to be a little more conscious of, okay, my 5-year-old doesn't need 5 different pairs of sunglasses. You know, they could probably have one for the times that we're going to be at something and the sun's going to be bright. And, you know, something like that. Kids, they wear it for 3 seconds and then they throw it on the ground and step on it anyway. But I think the key takeaway is if you have that as a priority, then a lot of this stuff is going to take care of itself over time.
People don't even realize they're doing it. People aren't consciously realizing they're doing this.
Just buying little knickknacks.
Yeah, because
probably not when they're doing it, but then when they have all the stuff lying around everywhere, they probably know. No,
they just think, oh man, we need a bigger house. Like they're not conscious of. They wouldn't do it. I'll give you a good example. You probably don't do the grocery shopping, right?
Sometimes.
Okay.
But
I
don't.
If I order online, my bill's $120 because I'm literally getting just what I need. If I go to the store, it's $200.
The best part of going to the store is the impulse.
And then
buys.
go start looking at how much stuff you end up throwing out or gets expired, all those different things. It's all marketed to us. It's become so easy. I caught myself yesterday. I got a text message from Caillou, whatever it's called. It's a hunting company. Pair of pants that I bought in the past that I really like, 50% off. So guess what? I clicked on it.
Did you buy 2 or 3?
Well, this gets better. Clearly, I got the pants that I wanted because they were in a different color. So I had gray before. These are brown. And
These are hunting pants.
well, yeah, I wear them for everything. I wear them to like plow snow. They're
I was gonna say the deer they care about your fashion.
So it's actually less about hunting, but they're like a warmer insulated pant that I can wear to plow snow and do different stuff when it's cold outside.
Gotcha.
Anyway, I got those in the cart. Good deal. Well, then while I'm on the website, it said go to the outlet store, up to 50% off. Other things. And these pants were on sale for $129. So my bill walking out of there should have been like $129 plus tax. Well, then I went to the outlet store and all the beanies were 65% off. So do you think I bought one? Of course I didn't.
Two or three.
Yeah. It's like, why wouldn't I have a black one? And why wouldn't I have an orange one? Like, I justified to myself that I was going to have beanies for the rest of my life. So why wouldn't I load up today? By the time it was all said and done, I had a few $100s in the cart, but that's where the marketing gets you. I saw it as a deal. I wasn't searching for pants. I had no intention yesterday to buy a new pair of hunting pants, but I get a text message. It's a deal I can't turn down. And truth be told, I probably would have bought another pair of those pants the next year or two, but they just moved it up. That's how people
they knew they were going to get you.
Yeah, they knew they were going to get me. So I think people just need to be really conscious of what is a need versus a want. If you're like this family in this article, they're making $140,000 a year, but they're spending more than they're making. Like they're worth $1 million, so they feel rich, but they're really broke. If you're one of those families, maybe figure out how to just turn off all the online shopping, which is really difficult. But most of the time, the stuff you're ordering online, you never even, if you woke up that day, most of the time you weren't even thinking about buying that stuff. Someone suggested that this is something you might like. And you're like, yeah, I think I would like to have that today.
I agree with you. I think I would like that.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'm guilty. I'm just trying to give people good information as to what's really happening and why you're buying all this stuff and getting marketed to and all those different things. Obviously people, Elias, are struggling because they don't have their budget under control. Inflation's up. But one of the things that I've noticed and that I've been reading about is, we're at the highest levels of home unaffordability since 2006. For most people, buying a new home or where they're going to live or where they're renting has become this giant piece of their budget. If you think back to like some Dave Ramsey principles, I think he says 25% of your take-home pay for your housing. Well, that's hard to do today. And there is a MSN, I check that every day. They were talking about something called boom mates. You know what boom mates are?
Yes, I actually saw.
Boomers that are becoming roommates. Yeah. And in nowhere in my world did I ever think that we'd hear about baby boomers getting roommates.
Probably a good idea, though.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, do you really want to go back to roommate land when you're like 65, 70 years old because you need to save money? It's one thing if you're doing it for like to meet friends and hang out and have some camaraderie, but if it's because you can't afford where you live.
Well, here's what it made me kind of think about. So I think when we were growing up, even me when I was growing up, like there wasn't all of these really, really big houses. Like how many like when you're growing up, how many kids grew up in like a McMansion or whatever you want to call it? Where now homes have gotten so big and the size of the family has gotten smaller at the same time, which I did think that maybe this is a practical thing for people to do. I get like no one wants to have a roommate, but if you're, I think there is an argument that could be made that we do waste a lot of the space in our residential real estate. Like a lot of these houses could shelter two families, maybe
more.
Three.
I mean,
right. So I'm not here to say that everyone should just start building smaller houses and stuff like that. But for older folks, if they're having a hard time and they can ease their cash flow situation by having a boom mate or a roommate, whatever you want to call it, it's probably a practical solution. Even if you don't need it to help with the bills, still probably a practical thing to do, depending on where you live and the size of the space. But
I don't know. Housing's unaffordable when senior citizens are getting roommates.
Well, it probably helps with their loneliness too, though.
How do they do it? They go to AARP and there's probably a match site now for them. It's like dating, but roommate site for people over 55.
I don't know.
Maybe that's
Who knows?
the new
It could be
top
fun.
idea.
Could be fun. Could be like going back to college and you're living in a dorm and living with roommates.
I mean,
and
a little
stuff.
bit
Who
of that
knows?
is why, we're seeing a cut in interest rates. I did see mortgage refis are drastically higher than before. You can get a 10-year or you can get a 30-year mortgage at 5.5% now.
That'll bring people in.
It'll bring people in. And it'll probably be lower. If you go out and look at Fed Watch, we're expecting that rate to go down another 0.5 point by the end of the year. And if you look out another year and a half, it's like another 2%. So, hopefully there's some easing and make some of the strains on buying a home or shelter a little bit better for most people.
Hope so.
Yep. Well, with that said, I want to thank everybody for watching the show. If you want more content like this, make sure to follow us on your social media platforms. Until next week, I want to thank everybody for listening.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. There's no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.